Here we go. Beginner's Guide to CW, What You Need to Know. This is a combination of two talks that I've given to the Rochester area hams, to the CW group actually. The first one is on why CW really, and the second one is skipping around how you learn CW. You see that I just brush on that. The second one is what exactly Jim brought up, which is exactly what's going on in the CW QSO. And I know about the freight situation. We've got that here, and we're trying to overcome it one-on-one. And this presentation was intended to help people understand what's going on. You know, what do I do next, huh? So we'll see. As a background, I was licensed in '58, and through high school, always been K2OID. And through high school, I came to love CW because the equipment that I could afford, the best way to get out was CW, really. Phone AM at the start, and then SSB just didn't hack it that much for me, except for local contacts. And like Jim said, you really become to love it. It's a language. It's elegant. You can talk to people that don't speak English because they speak CW, because they speak Morse, and it's just been great. And anything we can do to foster CW is to be encouraged. Okay, first is part one, CW, the original digital mode. Why CW? Well, CW is the original digital mode, as we said. It can get through and other modes can't. As I mentioned, that's why with my crummy equipment back in high school, I made a lot of contacts. It's less susceptible to QRN, which of course is interfere with static, and QRM, other interference. And because of that, it's often used in moon bounce, UHF-DX, records, distance records for distance per watt and things like that. It's less crowded on the bands because actually most hams seem to prefer voice, but the few of us on CW really appreciate it. Not the few, those of us that are on CW hope to be ever more. There are fewer lids. I think we all know what a lid is, a poor operator. People are more patient and more polite, certainly much more than phone these days. And as I mentioned already, you don't necessarily have to speak, somebody doesn't have to speak English in order to have a very good conversation with them. And in my opinion, it's more fun. Okay. We consider ourselves, some of us that are trying to be instructors in the CW group, consider ourselves Elmers. And the question is, why are we doing it? Well, we love CW and we want to see it, more of it on the bands. And we recognize that, and as Jim pointed out, you have to put time and effort into it and to be proficient. Now, only the student can put the time and effort into it, but the Helmers can help by explaining how it works, by providing practice opportunities. One of the ways our club works is we assign an Elmer to a student, and one-on-one, they have QSO. So I was an Elmer for AC2RL, John Hall, who wanted to get speed up in order to be able to do DX contests. And just every Monday and Wednesday at 11 o'clock, we got on the air and we QSO'd for about 6 months, and we got his speed up from 5 or 6 words a minute up to above 15, and now he's on his own. Also got him over the fear factor too. We provide practice opportunities, and of course, I was tracking his progress. CW is more than code. It's really a language. We already said that, but you can't emphasize it more. That's what it is. It's a language. And unfortunately, kids learn CW much more easily than adults. I would see whether Howard agrees with this, and I assume I know Howard would, because it sounds like he got into CW when he was a kid, and kids learn it a lot more easily than adults. That's just a fact. I learned it when I was 12 years old, and I don't remember having any trouble. And yet I've been teaching it to 50 and 60-year-olds, and you just lose something, just like you lose the ability to learn language. So you've got to be patient. But nonetheless, at any age you can learn CW, even to start at the beginning. As we noted, CW has its own language. It's got abbreviations, and most of the abbreviations are in English, but not all. If I'm talking to a Russian and he sends DSW, it's a contraction of Das Vidanya. It means goodbye. And yet, I can say DSW to a ham in California. He'll know what I'm talking about if he's a CW op. For mistakes, talking about rhythm, mistakes are 3 I's in a row. Did it. And would take too long to send in Morse code. Did it. Instead, the abbreviation ES, which I think probably came from Spanish once, is what is meant for and. It just goes a lot faster. Going is GG rather than going, and there are lots more. We'll probably go over some of them towards the end here. And as Jim mentioned, with the Farnsworth method, Tried to get our students to recognize letters and numbers by sound and not by pattern. The last thing you want to be doing is counting bits to decide whether it was an H or a 5 or an S. You just got to know what the sound is. If somebody sends a letter to somebody who's proficient in Morse code, you know right away what it is. You don't have to think about it. It becomes automatic, and that's the trick. Okay. The expectations for the people in our classes is, first, if you don't know any code, that you will use online programs or sometimes one-on-one instruction to learn the letters, numbers, and punctuation. And you will not become proficient overnight. I think this point has been made before, but it won't take you a lifetime either. We typically ask our students, starting out regardless, to practice at least 15 minutes a day, and to try not too much more than that either. Just ensure you do it regularly. Every day is important to getting your speed up. Once you're proficient, Jim also mentioned this, you've got to continue to get on the air once in a while or you'll backslide. It's just as simple as that. But if you really get into it, if you really get the bug, there'll be no backsliding because you'll be on the air with it. Several myths about CW that might make it easier for beginners if they realize that things aren't as they first appear. First myth, you must be able to copy 25 words a minute to take part in the CW contest. Well, John Hall, AC2RL, can tell you that's not true. If you know what's coming in CW, if you know the system, if you know that what's coming is the guy's call, your signal report, and his state, then you can copy a lot faster than you think. If you're answering a CQ, the other station often uses this call a couple of times. So if you don't get it the first time, you can send it the second time. And if you're trying to work DX in a pile-up, all you really need to do is recognize your call on the fly. When the other station comes back with your call, you're it. You don't need to be able to copy everybody else's call completely. You just need to be able to recognize your own. And finally, CW operators are gentlemen and gentle ladies. And in most situations, you ask somebody to slow down, they would be more than glad to do it. Okay, second CW myth. During Rag 2, a good CW operator copies everything perfect. Not true. You get the gist of it. You're sitting there. Howard talked about head copying. Yeah, you sit there and, you kind of get the gist of it. And every now and then, you may be doing something else and miss a letter or two or miss a word or two. You're not necessarily getting every word to have a good QSO. You don't necessarily have to hear every word in order to do a regular conversation with somebody. We don't sit there, oh, I missed one. Copying every word was only for the old Morse test where you had to copy a minute solid. Even these days, it's a multiple choice, or the last FCC exams are multiple choice. So you don't have to copy everything perfect, and it's really not necessary. A good CW operator answers CQ with the same speed as a calling station. That's true. That's not a myth. A good CW operator doesn't try and show off. You're trying to have a good contact. And if somebody's calling CQ slowly, if you don't want it to go slow, don't answer them. If you do want to have a QSO, be nice to them. And the vast majority of CW ops are. In any case, the thing that every beginning CW operator needs to know is QRS. Please slow down. The guy's going too fast, QRS. You can also send QRQ if you want him to speed up, but I don't think that's used very commonly. There are places where slow CW is practiced in the bands. That's true. I'm going to go over those in the next presentation where they are. It would be very rude for somebody to start sending at 30 or 40 words a minute in the slow portion of the band. That would be considered poor form. Preparation when you're just getting into copying CW, a notebook, pen, good pen. You want to be able to write. You want to start out by writing. I agree with Howard. You really need to get the hand-brain combination. He was talking about sending. I'm talking about receiving. But writing it down when you hear it, rather than always just copying in your head, is a good way to learn. And some of these other things we've talked about before, headphones, and it helps to have a goal of what you want to accomplish. For John, AC2RL, he wanted to be able to work the X contest. If you want to be able to drag chew, or you want to get your speed up above 10 words a minute, and some kind of a time frame also helps with the new students. Last slide on this section is, of course, it helps to have a code practice oscillator. Back in my high school days, they were tube type and a little bit complicated to build. These days, a 555 and a couple of parts would make a very nice code practice oscillator to use. Or if you've got a CW transceiver, a transceiver, most transceivers have tiers built in, and you can use that for practice too. So that's why CW and why we love it. Now let's talk about what happens. Okay, I've got my license. I've been through the class. It's time to talk to somebody. I'm scared out of my mind. What do I do? Your first Q cell. That's part 2. First is where are the CW stations? Well, the CW band. You can operate CW anywhere in the band. Most of us know that, but mostly there's a CW only and CW and data, that is only part of the band. That's in the lower part, and actually by convention CW is usually restricted to the very lowest part. Just above the lowest part is where the slower CW is. So on 80 meters, it's about above, say, 3.55, about 50 kilohertz above the bottom of the band. On 40 meters, it's 705 to 707, somewhere around in there, megahertz. And of course, without going into it, they're on the other places too. Generally, in the bottom of the band, just a little bit above the bottom is where you'll find the slower CW. Where are the bands? You know, typically look 50 to 70 hertz above the band edge. One of the things to stop you from going too high, you get too much above 70 kilohertz above the bottom of the band, you begin to get the RIDI and FT8 and all the other data modes. So usually once you start hearing data stations, back off, go back down the band a little bit to listen for station copy. Okay, how do I initiate a contact? Well, I call CQ. Okay, there are some different opinions on this. You want your CQ to be long enough that people just tuning around the band come across your signal, but you don't want it so long that they go to sleep on you. You know, lose attention. So I usually send 4 CQs, DE, which is from. I'm going to be going over that again. They're called twice, and K. Go over that in a minute too. Answer: the CW station's calling at a speed as fast as he sends a CQ or slower, not faster. And if you call CQ, and before calling CQ, it's also a good practice to see whether the frequency is clear. One way of finding out whether the piece of frequency is clear is to send QRZ, which basically means, what was that again? If somebody's on the frequency and having a contact, and you send QRZ, they'll get on and say something to the effect of frequency in use or something like that, and you cannot QRM them. Otherwise, after sending QRZ once, maybe twice with my call, then I send the CQ. You only want to do it once because you only really want one answer. You don't want a whole bunch of people answering you. That doesn't do anybody any good. Okay, the initial exchanges. Okay, this is what a typical CW would be. This is going to be gibberish to people that aren't familiar with CW, and this might be why some people have fright. You know, you hear somebody calling CQ from W2XYZ. Okay, my answer would be W2XYZ from K2OID, and then the reply. Let's see what all this means. Okay, I recognize some of it. What does it mean? Well, get used to this format. We're going to have this quite a bit for the next several minutes. In yellow, first, CQ, QQ, of course, anybody want to contact. DE is from. Notice that if I use from, FROM would be very long in Morse code. DE, from in Spanish, very quick. I can see how that one got adopted. And then K, back to you. My answer, K2OID from W2XYZ from K2OID. Okay, great, that's great. Okay, all right, now what do I do? Well, his reply will be something, we'll always take this format to start out with. This is part of the protocol that Jim was talking about. It's K2OID, DE, W2XYZ. His reply to me, K2OID, DE, W2XYZ. Okay. First, RR, Roger, Roger, or Roger, Roger, and ES, again, shorthand. Thanks, TNX, you recognize, that's English. FER is for. If it was FOR, it would take longer to send the call, okay? UR, your, RST, readability, signal strength, and tone is 569. We're going to go over that in a minute for novices. And QTH, my location is NR, near Binghamton, New York. And he repeated that. That's just in case you don't get it the first time. Notice we repeat in the first go around, since we don't know how well the other station is copying me, I send the signal report twice, and I send everything twice. This is QTH I send twice, and then next is name and send that twice. Okay, and this is a standard format. A little bit of an introduction, then the RST, then the QTH, then the name. It's always the same. Okay, and then we end up with this so how HW. It's really means so how copy AR time for you to not your turn K2OID from W2XYZ, so that you can see how that goes. This is the standard form. You work anybody, it's going to look like this if it's a regular contact and not something like a contest or the expedition. Oh yes, the one comment that I haven't made is notice that I've got a lot of dashes in there. You learn punctuation when you're for taking tests and things like that, but frankly, for the most part, punctuation is not used. Mostly a dash is used as the universal separator. You'll see a lot of dashes in Morse language. And all dashes also stand for well. You know, when you don't know what you're going to say next, send a string of dashes. It's kind of like when in a conversation you're going, well, you know, that's really what the dash can be too. Now, my answer. In the initial exchange, when W2XYZ, when he sends K2OID DEW2XYZ, which is what he just sent, I now know, you know that he or she has your call correct. And you know that W2XYZ is actually CUSA with you, not somebody else. So we've learned quite a bit from the first go around. Signal report or RST, let's see the way that goes in CW. First, the readability is a scale from 1 to 5. 5 means perfectly copyable. 4 means with some difficulty, perhaps QRM or static. 3 means significant difficulty. 2, I can hardly copy you. 4, I didn't copy you at all. And for the signal strength, it's a scale from 1 to 9, more or less following your S meter. 9 means really strong. 7 to 8, 5 to 6 are kind of in the normal range, high normal, low normal. 3 or 4 is weak, and 1 or 2 is very weak signals. Now, if you're in contact with somebody, so just simply called the CQ, be honest about the signal reports. You're not doing anybody any favors. It's not a contest. It just tells you how well you're being received. Not a contest at all. Be honest about it. When you get to DX stations, you'll find that some of them give everybody 599. So you see, you know, very strong signal, everything's perfect. By the way, what's your call again? You get a lot of that kind of stuff. But that's just, well, I call it part of the game. In a DX contest or a DX expedition, it's sometimes just easier just to give everybody 599, so they do. Sometimes you want to add, if the conditions, if a lot of signal painting, that's what QSB is, send so. 599 QSB actually gives you a nice out when you want to repeat, well, what was your name again? I missed it because you really weren't 599, the signal faded. So 599 QSB is sometimes an interesting thing to add. The tone scale is really a holdover from the Spark days. All signals these days on the band, you rarely hear anything that's not a perfect tone, a signal 9. It used to be when before the Russians had decent equipment, there was a lot of hum and chirp. And sometimes you would say, you know, 589C, 588, I'm sorry, C, give them an 8 or a 7 or a 6, C for chirp. That occasionally happened. But these days, don't give anybody less than a 9 unless they're really bad, you're really insulting them. QTH, I generally send, I'm in Webster, New York, but nobody knows where Webster is, so I generally tell them near Rochester. Note that these days, a lot of PAMs have computers in their state, and computers and access to QRZ.com, and very often they come back to you with the information. We already know everything about you. They've looked you up, and they got a picture of you and all the rest of that. But I've seen people generally send the information anyway. Your typical response runs just exactly like the initial information from the station calling CQ. Fine business, a little bit of niceties. Fine business, George, nice to meet you. Your RST is 579, again repeated twice. Although if he told me it was 599, I might only send that once. QTH is near Rochester. I will usually send Rochester and the name twice because just in case his copying isn't quite up to his speed of sending, that means he doesn't have to ask you again. But okay, I send it twice. That might be a time to tell them what your rig is. My rig is a Flex 6300, which I have in the background. and a dipole at 50 feet. WX is weather. You'll see the abbreviations next. Here we go. So the new ones. FB is fine business. I think you'll notice that CW is built on abbreviations, which makes it really its own language, because the abbreviations are universal. So that often I've listened to two Russians speaking to each other, one in Siberia and one in Asia and European Russia on CW. You'll understand everything they're saying because they're all speaking in these same abbreviations. You can read them here for the sake of time. I won't go over them. There are a whole bunch of them. At the end of the presentation, if you want to get a package of the slides, you'll see there are more. They're all, the abbreviations are all online. Once you're finished with the initial responses, typically the next item of discussion will be the rig or weather, or perhaps a comment on your response. You know, maybe you talk to somebody in British Columbia. Oh, I was in Victoria a couple of years ago. I understand that, you know, I thought it was a beautiful city or something of that sort. Or ask them how long it's been a ham or equipment, all kinds of possible things. Some people like to chat, some people don't. You'll get the feeling for it. If they like to chat, so much the better. Some Qs are very short, some can last hours. It just all depends. An important message to people just learning CW is don't sweat it if somebody wants to go right away. Some folks just don't like to write you. You know, you'll exchange calls and the name, and they're gone. Some people want to tell them all about their last grandchild. You know, it depends. Just go with the flow. If they want to talk, fine. If they don't want to talk, fine. Some hints and tips about a CW conversation. Always begin the transmission with some feedback on the copy. Conditions change. QRM comes and goes. You know, I like to say solid copy or 100% or in this case, the second line is QRM that time. I got most of it. You know, get them some feeling of how well you're copying, because that will affect whether they repeat, whether the other guy repeats things. QRS is very important. You know, I'm new to CW, please QRS. I've never run into anybody who wouldn't be more than happy to QRS. You know, the more adept a CW operator is, the more he wants to share his or her skills with other people. And the way to do it is to get more CW operators on the air. It's not to scare them away. So nobody cares. You know, QRS is not an insult to anybody. Don't worry about it. Going too fast for you, you're uncomfortable, you're nervous, QRS. They will. Also, don't understand abbreviations, that's fine too. Abbreviations are optional. You can spell the whole thing out. Nobody's going to think less of you for not using the abbreviations. Also, if you don't know what the abbreviations are, you can ask if you don't want to look it up. I recently got a QCX QRP rig, and I'm taking part in the QRP, it's a low power contest, and everybody's sending 72. And I thought that was a mistake. And I asked somebody, and 72 is what low power operators send to each other instead of 73. 73 is goodbye, 72 is goodbye if you're low power. So you ask, they tell you. Nothing to get nervous about, nothing to get excited about. Okay. Never hesitate to say something, have something repeated that you missed. Sometimes 2 and 3 times. Folks will be glad to do it. And don't let Throwoffs, if you happen to find one, scare you off. If you're on the low part, low speed part of the band, don't worry about it. It's the other guy that's violating the rules, not, you know, the informal rules, not you. We already talked about punctuation. Some more hints. Occasionally, you don't want anybody to break into your conversation. And KN means please nobody break in. When would that be? Well, if you happen to get a rare one and the guy wants to chat, we were just discussing this with some friends of mine this afternoon. Once a couple years ago, I was on 40 meters and happened to pick up Bear Island, which is near Spitsbergen, north of Norway. And I didn't want anybody to break in. So guy wanted to talk, so we were having a little conversation signing KN, and everybody stayed away. And as soon as I left, I found out how many people wanted to work this guy because it was just bedlam. So KN can come in handy sometimes. It was very useful. Otherwise, people are welcome. If you don't sign KN, it means that people are welcome to break in. So sometimes if you see a couple of DX stations chatting with each other, and it's a new one for you. Between the exchanges, if you can break in and just send your call, or BK and you send your call, it's a way of getting a new one. I know I've done that occasionally too. So, KN, you don't want anybody to join you? Okay, if you do. If it's okay, I should say. Tying the ribbon, which is Ham's talk for ending the contact. Okay, there are lots of ways that the ribbon gets tied, whether you like it or not. One can be involuntary. The sun has just set and the band is going out, and you no longer have good propagation between you and the station you're working on. That would be one. QRN pops up, or QRM, or the QSB gets too bad. And you could say something like, I think I've got this on the next page. Yeah, sorry, SRI was sorry, no copy because QRM. The 73s, some of the things you'll see a lot is, thanks for the QSO, okay, HPE, see you again. Hope to see you again. Sounds good. SK this is the last transmission before I'm going to leave. It also, unfortunately, means silent key, which means you passed away, but that's not what it means here. So SK is AR between transmissions. SK is the end, is the final transmission, and then you close it with CL, which is closing down, clear, or closing down. Okay. When you have another commitment, say so, and you get a lot of this. The XYL, which is the wife is calling me to dinner, or I must get this, it's late, I got to get some sleep, Z's to sleep. More commonly, there's no excuse at all. It's just, that's all from here. I've run out of things to talk about. Do you have anything more for me? More for you, more for me. That's what QRU means. So that's another way of closing it off. But that's just the start. Okay, I'm going to be back to that one in just a second here. If you want a QSL card, which is called confirmation, now's the time to ask for it. You know, before you sign, please PSE, please QSL, or please QSL via the Bureau. And the answer will probably be QSL sure, meaning that he'll do it. Note that QSL, of course, and Q signals also means I heard you. It's more or less synonymous with Roger, Roger. You know, sometimes you could be in contact with your side of the exchange with QSL, meaning I got everything you said. QSL question mark, though, means did you copy what I sent? So QSL can be handy. I like RR, it's quicker. Okay, these we've talked about already, please, and the Bureau, of course. Okay, final exchange, both signs end with the CL, you know, SK. Sometimes, you know, SK and A, I use SK and AR altogether. It's SK would be enough. Different people, by the way, you notice that in Morse code speak, different hams have different styles, and when you get on the air and listen to them, you'll pick up your own style, and sometimes you change around a little bit. It's a language, you know, it's like a language, and it goes that way. Okay. Good evening. You know, it's a couple more abbreviations. Good evening and that kind of things. Like nice QSO. Good evening, and the transmit, end of the QSO, end of transmission, and then turn it back over clear. You know, clear. Okay, here we go. But wait, there's more. Yes, there's just a little bit more to it. To this final handshake. After the final transmission, and the CW goodbyes and all the rest of that, technically against the rules, but everybody does it. They will say GE, good evening, Bob, or just GE, and then DIT space DIT, 2 DITs spaced. And then the other guy will go, good evening, George, DIT, DIT. You know, it's kind of a shaving a haircut 2 bits kind of a thing. It goes DIT, 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 DIT. It's part of the ballet or the rhythm of CW that Jim was talking about that I completely concur with. A good CW contact is like, it's like poetry. It's just back and forth and back and forth. It's got a nice rhythm. You understand what's going on. You understand what's practiced, and it's a marvelous thing to experience once you become even moderately proficient. The trick is, if we can just get, I'm hoping that what this presentation will do is to get novices on CW familiar with the protocols of CW that Jim talked about, that is being so important. That people will get, and maybe it'll take an Elmer to get them over the hump, not just the presentation, but you need to, once you understand the protocols and you understand what's expected, whether it's a DX contest or a reg 2 or trying to work a new one, once you get used to the protocol of it, it becomes much easier. It becomes much less fearful, and I'm hoping that we can that I can get beginners over the hump on that. And I will confirm what Jim said, which is many folks that we Elmer are just afraid, and they shouldn't be, because we're really a bunch of nice folks. I mean, CW guys are a lot more polite than the phone folks, and nobody, sorry phone folks, but nobody will yell at you. It's really really kind of nice, and many of us think it's the most elegant and enjoyable mode. Okay, so with that, I've got at the end of this presentation, I hope we can post it somewhere so you can look at them. You can look at these online, so you can see what makes it a shorthand. And looking, you know, I know these things because I've been a CW operator, and I'm sure Howard and Jim can tell you the same things, and Joe and Pete and all the others, you know, Elmers that are listening. You kind of pick these things up, and then you go look at the list and you go, oh yeah, I know 90% of those. Oh, here's a new one. You know, there might be a new one that you would want to look up. I'm just looking to see which ones what I would consider to be a new one for me. No, actually, none of them. I know all. Let's see. VY is very. WID. No, even that one I know. Oh well. At any rate, so I want to thank everybody. Let me get back to